Okay, now we're ready to, in earnest, actually set up our scene. In the last movie we looked at creating a new scene and we talked a little bit about some of the controls and setting up origins. Now we're actually going to come in here and we're going to create a scene for real. So I'm just going to call this a new project. And let's put this in the same area here. So our project files, mini race, and I will save this as number 2. I had one in there previously that I was experimenting with, but I'm just going to overwrite that. So we'll actually have a brand new scene that we can work with. And you can see our guy is standing in the middle of the world here. I think one of the first things I'll do is I'll just move him off to the side a little bit. And I'm going to do that because I want him so that we can, when we bring other objects in, he doesn't stand in the middle of them. So I'm going to hit the M key for move, and I'm going to click down at his base, and I'm going to click and drag him over a little bit. And we'll just bring him over like that. And basically, if you look down here, you can see that I moved him over 1.6 meters on the red and 1.4 meters on the green. And if I wanted to change that, and it doesn't really matter, but just to show you that you can, maybe I'll make them both the same. I'll make them both 1.5. So I'll click here in the red, set that to 1.5, tab over 1.5, like that, and that actually moves him. So now we've got a little bit of extra room here. Okay. I'll hit the O key so that I don't see that rectangle in my way. Now that gives me the orbit tool. And the next thing I want to do now is I want to bring in a model from the 3D warehouse. And if you haven't checked out 3D warehouse yet, it's pretty cool. There's lots and lots and lots of models there to choose from that are created by ordinary people and some also by professionals. But let's go there and look by clicking this button that says 3D Warehouse. And 3D Warehouse is made by Google, and so we're actually now at the sketchup.google.com/3D Warehouse. And here they're just showing us some collections and featured collections and popular models and things like that. If you haven't been here before, it's worth checking out. So in this case, I'm going to use the search bar up here, and I'm going to search for racetrack. And either I would hit enter or return on my keyboard, or I can just click the search button. And once I do, you'll see that we have pages and pages of racetracks. But in this case, I want to use this one right here, the one called racetrack. So I'll click that, and it shows me a representation of it here, and that's going to be quite useful to us. I'll click on download model, and in this case there are 3 different versions. I'm going to take the SketchUp version 6 model, that's probably the most recent one, and I'll just click the download button, and then I'm going to save it in the same place as everything else. So I already saved it once, I'm going to save it again just to show you how long it took. So I'll click save, and I'll hit replace that with the new one that I'm downloading, and it'll take a moment, and then it'll actually bring it in. And now we're looking in our origin settings window, which opens up whenever you're actually importing a model. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this model because I would rather its long edge run in the same direction as that orange arrow. Not for any particular reason, I just prefer it. That's just my preference. So I'm going to click this button here that has the red, and you'll notice as I click these that it kind of rotates around a common center. Well, this model was saved originally in SketchUp so that the model was not centered in the SketchUp world space, so that the center of the model was right over the world space origin. It was offset this amount, and so that's why it's rotating around that origin. And just like using this rotate button here, it does effectively the same thing. I can use that, or I can jump between these. However, if I click this one here, this one will actually rotate it 90 degrees on the vertical, and then as I rotate it, you'll see that it actually is changing its position around that. Well, we don't want to do that. So I'm going to go here, just like this, and then I'm going to click this button here that will center it up in that area. The other thing that I'm going to need to do is scale it. Now it says it's scaled at 100%. Let's see what happens if we bring it in at this size. Well, it looks pretty nice, except for it's only large enough for a model car. It's not really large enough for a full-size vehicle. And we can tell at a glance because our guy here is about 6 feet tall, and he's standing in what looks like a miniature golf course version of our racetrack. So we need to scale our racetrack up a lot. So what we'll do is we'll come back to our origin settings. We'll change our scale from 100% to 2000%. And make sure that whenever you change the scaling here, that you hit enter or return before you hit the apply button. Now this will also need to be recentered. I'm going to back off so you can see this. It lost its center when it scaled. So I'm just going to go ahead and click this button again to recenter it. And now that I've done that, I can click apply, and that puts it in our world. And you can see our guy now is about the right size for this world. Okay, next thing I need to do is if you look closely, you can see that our guy here is actually knee-deep in this pavement. I'm going to hit the O button the O key in order to orbit. Click and drag to orbit around here so that we can see. And then I'll just use my mouse wheel to zoom in. So it looks like he's about a knee's height deep into this pavement, and which is about half a meter. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just guesstimate, and I think that I'll get this pretty much right on. So I'm going to click on our raceway here, and you'll notice that our raceway does not have the ability so far down here to type in any values. That's because we don't yet have a scene. Each one of these blue blocks that you'll see here in the timeline view is actually what's referred to as a scene, and it takes that parlance from the way that SketchUp creates scenes. If you want to animate in SketchUp, the only thing that you can really animate are the camera moves, so that you can change your view. You can also animate a few other characteristics in there, but that's primarily all you can really animate. And so they call each one of those camera moves a new scene. And so in here, when you create a new scene by just hitting the N key, N as in new, you don't have to hold down Option or Command or any of those other modifier keys, just hit N, and when you do, it'll put a new scene in there. And you'll see that down here now we have the ability to enter those numbers. If I undo that, you'll see that they disappear. If I hit N, now we can come in here and do that. So I'm going to make a change on the blue axis. I'm going to lower this down just on the blue axis. So I'm going to click here once to select that row. Then I'm going to click again one time and wait a second, and then it allows me to make a change. And you'll notice, by the way, that not all of the different columns here will allow you to change the numeric values. You can certainly change the red, the green, and the blue, and in each case you click once, wait a second, and then click again. If I come over to speed and click there, it will not allow me with a second click to change that. That we have to modify in a different way. If I click on the frame setting, that is to say the current frame that we're at, I can click there once and it'll allow me to do that. For now, we're just going to go back to our blue one, and we're going to change this to minus 0.6 meters. So roughly half a meter, and that puts it right down at the level of the soles of his shoes. And that's where we want it. So we've now brought in our terrain, and if I back way off, and I'm going to do that by pressing the comma key, which will give us our dolly tool here, like that, just by hitting the comma key on our keyboard. Then I'm going to click and drag back so that we can get a sense of just how big this world is now. So that's what we've got so far. And for now, that's what we're going to keep. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go Command S or choose Save from the File menu, and it's now saved. And then when we come back, we're going to bring in our Mini Cooper, and then we'll animate that car racing around our track here.